What happens when the person you built your life with was never really who they said they were? This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about psychological abuse, the slow erosion of self through manipulation, deception, and emotional starvation. When you're constantly blamed, dismissed, or gaslit, you start to question your reality. You start to wonder, is it me, or is something much deeper hiding behind the silence? In this story, a devoted wife, Sheila, finds herself humiliated not just by an affair, but by the revelation that her marriage was built on a lie so personal, so shattering, that it rewrites her entire past. This is about covert narcissism, gaslighting, and betrayal trauma, the kind that doesn't leave bruises on the skin, but scars on the soul. This is Red Flag Confessions, and Sheila's story will stay with you long after the last word. She thought he was away for a few days at a professional convention with Julius, his close friend from college. It sounded innocent enough, just business as usual, until the pieces started falling out of place. But nothing could prepare Sheila for the truth that shattered her identity, her faith, and her marriage. This is a story of betrayal, verbal abuse, and a double confession that no woman ever deserves. Sheila, now 38, a soft-spoken Filipina raised in a conservative Christian home. Her family migrated to California from the Philippines when she was 12. She'd been through heartbreak before, but when she met Brian in college, an outgoing, charming American in a real estate industry, she believed God had finally sent the one. They got married 2 years after graduation. Sheila believed in working through struggles, because marriage was sacred. They had a daughter, Xian, her light in the darkest times. But things started changing when Xian turned 3. Brian wasn't violent, but his words were like daggers. You're too sensitive. Why do you always need attention? You're paranoid, it's just stress. He blamed her for everything. Her body, her cooking, her parenting, nothing was enough. Xian adored her father. She was his little shadow. And that bond was something Sheila couldn't bring herself to break. She still believed in vows, in redemption. And every time she threatened to leave, Brian would pull her back in. Not with promises, but with just enough tenderness to keep her hanging, suspended between hope and heartbreak. Our daughter Xian turned 5, and I remember feeling genuinely proud of Brian. It was actually his idea to celebrate her birthday. That day turned out to be more special than I expected. It was also the first time I got to know Julius better. He came as one of the guests, brought Xian a beautiful pink dress, and even contributed the pink cake. I remember thinking, wow, it's kind of heartwarming to have a family friend who genuinely wants to be part of our lives like that. But one evening, Sheila was putting laundry away when she saw his phone buzz. A quick, can't wait for Hawaii. She froze. When she asked Brian about it, he smirked and said, "It's Julius's sister, don't start again." But something felt off. Why would Julie say that? She started watching him closely. He was shaving more, dressing sharper, always texting, always smiling into his phone when he thought she wasn't looking. Sheila had already some suspicion that Brian is having an affair. It started as a work thing, or at least that's what Brian called it. He mentioned the annual Pacific Business and Leadership Summit happening in Hawaii that year, a 5-day convention filled with panels, networking events, and keynotes from influential leaders across Asia and North America. Brian, always hungry for validation and recognition, didn't hesitate to register. But what made Sheila pause was Julius. "He's one of the guest speakers," Brian said casually over dinner, barely looking up from his phone. "He's doing a talk on sustainable team dynamics in high-risk sectors. Impressive, right?" Sheila blinked, her fork midair. "Julius, since when does he speak at conferences?" Brian shrugged. "He's been moving up. People are starting to notice him." And she had noticed something else, too. How Julius had been around more, helping with house repairs, showing up for Xian's birthday with a perfect pink dress and a cake, making himself part of the family without ever officially being one. Now the two of them were flying out together. Same itinerary, same hotel, Same access to late-night mixers where accountability fades into dim lighting and excuses. Sheila kept her voice even. Sounds like a good opportunity. But her chest tightened. She'd been down this road before, the vague conferences, the unreachable hours, the sudden defensiveness over texts. Deep down she knew there would be a woman. Not just any woman, a mistress. And if Brian was going to Hawaii for business, it wasn't just business he'd be handling. And Julius, of course he knew. They were close, always sharing knowing glances, inside jokes she wasn't part of. Julius had probably met her, covered for him, maybe even coordinated the whole thing under the guise of networking. That stung more than she expected, because Julius, the one who seemed so eager to be family, had never really been her ally. She forced a smile, nodding again. "Tell Julius I said congratulations." But in her gut, the storm was already forming. Not because she had proof, but because after all these years she'd learned her intuition was never wrong. Then the Hawaii trip happened, but something in Sheila's gut twisted the moment he packed his bags. She had felt unease before, but this felt like standing at the edge of a cliff and the wind was about to push her off. The night Brian came back from Hawaii, Sheila waited. He smelled different, like a hotel, not the beach. He looked free. "What did you do?" she asked. He didn't answer. 2 nights later he was drunk, and Sheila heard it. She overheard Brian's voice. "No, she doesn't know yet. I know, we'd tell her. I'm tired of hiding, too. Bye now. I miss you." Sheila's knees buckled. She knocked on the door. He didn't come out for an hour. He finally sat her down. No apologies, just, "Julie isn't Julius' sister. Julie is Julius. I've been in love with him since college," Sheila whispered. "And me? What was I?" Brian said, "You were stability. Julius was freedom." Worse still, they had planned this Hawaii trip as their pre-honeymoon. They were planning to move in together, full-time. He was going to leave Sheila and Sheann behind. He said, "I didn't think you'd ever understand." Brian promised he would still support Sheann financially. He said he'd always be there for her as a father, but how could I trust a man who built our entire life on a lie? I looked at my daughter sleeping peacefully, clutching her stuffed bunny. She was only 7, too innocent, too fragile to carry the weight of her father's secret. So I made a decision. I'd leave with Sheann, and for now I wouldn't tell her the real reason. Not yet. Not until she was old enough to understand that sometimes the people who claim to love us are wearing masks, and those masks don't always come off gently. Sheila didn't cry. Not then. Her pain went deeper than tears. It was humiliation, a public lie, a private collapse. She tried to pray it away. Tried counseling. But how do you fix something that was never real? Every word, every I love you, every anniversary. It was a cover story. Brian moved in with Julius. Sheila moved into therapy. And one day she asked herself, was I ever truly loved? I stayed because I believed in marriage. I stayed because I thought he was broken and needed grace. But I forgot that I deserve love that is honest, love that is safe, love that doesn't leave bruises on the soul. She's now focused on her daughter, rebuilding her confidence, and finally learning to trust her intuition, the same one that whispered the truth all along. If you've ever questioned your reality, your worth, or your sanity in a relationship, you're not alone. Sheila's story is a reminder. Sometimes the truth is ugly, but living in truth is still better than dying in a lie. This story touches on multiple layers of psychological abuse and trauma bonding, often seen in complex long-term relationships. Sheila, a deeply loyal and emotionally invested partner, endured years of verbal abuse and gaslighting, believing that love meant sacrifice, especially influenced by her strong Christian values around marriage and commitment. The betrayal wasn't just romantic, it was existential. Sheila was emotionally manipulated, made to feel insecure, and then discarded under humiliating circumstances. The psychological toll of this kind of betrayal, especially when a child is involved, is devastating. It fractures trust, self-worth, and reality. Julius, remaining in the background, blurred both in images and in real life, symbolizes the hidden threats and emotional triangulation Sheila endured. She wasn't just abandoned, she was replaced and blindsided, making the emotional recovery even harder. What would you have done if you were in Sheila's shoes? Do you think Brian owed her the truth years earlier? Can you ever fully heal from a betrayal that feels like your whole life was a lie? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you or someone you know been through a story like this? Your voice might help someone else feel seen. Here at Red Flag Confessions, we give voice to the pain others tried to silence. Because healing starts when the truth is no longer hidden. If this story struck a nerve, give it a like, subscribe for more true toxic tales, and don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss a confession. Subscribe for more real confessions on Red Flag Confessions, because your story might be the next one we tell.